Today's episode of the Dawg House Podcast, we're going to talk about Georgia's big recruiting week as they picked up Chauncey Bowens, four-star running back out of Florida, who flipped from the University of Florida, which is a great pickup. Also, Justin Greene, four-star defensive lineman. Also, we're going to mention the future of the Georgia-Florida series in Jacksonville, tailgating rituals, favorite Georgia-related song, and much, much more. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. That would really help us out. This week's episode, we're going to have Seth Saunders from the Saturdays in Athens podcast. How we doing today, Seth?
Doing great, brother. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for coming on with us. Another great week here to talk about some Georgia football. See, I just wanted to get your thoughts. I'm not sure if you follow recruiting fairly well, but we had a big flip this past week. I believe it was Friday or Saturday, I believe. We had Chauncey Bowens coming over from the Gators, big rival for us at running back. I didn't know if you read into that. And also Justin Greene, he's another four-star defensive lineman that committed over. I was going to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of the theme of the Kirby Smart era at Georgia, right? That recruiting train just keeps on rolling, and it just never ceases to amaze me what they've put in place from a process perspective, and how it's just a streamline to not just get talented kids, but to get kids that are the build that they want them to be. I think so much of what's been special about Kirby's era there is the culture they've put in place there, especially given all the fluidity with NIL and transfers and everything like that. And so, get two more kids on board is fantastic. I thought Chauncey's flip was big too, because obviously you're taking somebody out of a gigantic rival's recruiting pot. So I love that. And I also thought it was kind of a double whammy because Florida also had a bit of a recruiting debacle this weekend with the social media videos that got released of them taking the pictures, and it's on like this plexiglass and the kid falls down. So it was a double black eye weekend for the Gators, and certainly wasn't unhappy about that.
Exactly. I got a feeling like Billy Napier, if he struggles again this year, he might get a little bit of a warm seat. I mean, you're competing with Georgia, who's in their probably greatest reign ever, or the best run, and it's just tough to be a Gator fan. And I think if we beat them again in Jacksonville, and then if Florida State gets them, they go 6-7 wins, could be a little bit of a warm seat.
Let me ask you this about Florida, because I agree with that, but my question is, do you think that is bloated expectations given what their program has been? Because if we're having a real conversation about it, outside of the COVID year with Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts, have they really been a dominant power for, we're talking a number of years now, right? I mean, you could make the argument that since Urban left, they really haven't been in the national title conversation. But I think that's where they still see themselves. And I'm not saying they can't get there again. They absolutely can. They recruit one of the best states for football talent in the country. They have facilities, but I don't know if you read the Andy Staples article that he released on The Athletic, which he recently left The Athletic, but about kind of the culture there and the things that have happened from a resources perspective. And I found it interesting because it seems like they are on the reverse track from the path that UGA has been on since Kirby took over. And I just wonder sometimes if these schools get, they're just not being real about what their expectations should be right now. And I'm not unconvinced that Billy Napier wouldn't be a good fit there. I just think they've got to give him a little runway, right, to figure it out. But man, I just don't know if that donor base has the patience for that. And but I guess the flip side of that is because of the recruiting base, they could probably turn that ship pretty quickly. Like a couple recruiting classes, and with the transfer portal, they might be all right. But this first kind of 18 months of Billy has not, I would say, gone as they anticipated it would with the NIL stuff and with, different things. It hasn't been a smooth transition, I don't think.
Yeah, then answer your question, if you look at it, I mean, 2008, I believe, was the last one they won with Tim Tebow. And, you're coming up on 15 years, 15 seasons. And, they had the Will Muschamps, they had the McElwain era, they had Napier now. So I just feel like they're still kind of living in that when they had those two national titles under Urban Meyer, still kind of living in that. Almost like Tennessee is still like, hey, they were great in the '90s, but it's been so long.
Yeah.
And they were beating Georgia and kind of like with those down years, kind of like the Rick years. And then when Kirby came, I believe he's 5-2 against them, which is great in that series.
Yeah.
So I do think, but I think they need to be kind of patient. But I just, they got quarterback issues. That spring game is pretty hard to watch. I know it's a spring game, but they need to get it going because if having a great talent like AR, which Anthony Richardson I thought was a reach at number 4 going to the Colts, but still it's good for their recruiting. But they're just not headed in the right direction from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I just felt like last year too, they looked a little rudderless. Like they didn't have anybody on the player side that was kind of stepping up and taking that leadership role. And look, I could be totally wrong about that. I'm not following their program every day, but just from what you saw on the field from them, just didn't seem like they had that. And I thought that was what was so big with Kirby's transition from his first year in 16 to 17 was getting that buy-in from the upperclassmen who had been recruited by Coach Rick's staff. And then I thought it was a seminal moment when the 4 guys come back, Sony, Nick, Davin, and Lorenzo, and say, hey, we're going to come back for this next year. And I thought, man, that was like the springboard to everything that's happened since then. And Florida needs something like that. They need some culture buy-in from guys on their team that aren't just talented, but also are in leadership roles within that program, I think.
Completely agree. Didn't want us, since we were talking about that transition into, so I believe it was announced 2025, they're going to have the renovations in Jacksonville to TIA, and looks like it's home and home. I've went to Jacksonville. I'm sure you have. I think it was in 8 to 10 time with my friends. But so I was going to get your thoughts on, like, are you glad it maybe goes to that, or you think Jacksonville's going to go away? Are you a Jacksonville guy, or what?
So it's really interesting. I thought one of the more interesting developments last week was the release of the renderings for the renovations, because I think that was the murky part of it when they initially announced it was, hey, there's going to be renovations, and there didn't seem to be much of a plan behind it. And it kind of seemed out of left field. And so I think everybody on the Georgia and the Florida side, all were going, so what does this mean now? Does this mean that this may become a permanent on-campus thing and we're going to lose this neutral field aspect of it? But I thought when they released the renderings, and it looked like it did, I mean, it looks like a baby SoFi if you really look at it. And I thought it looked cool. And if they execute that, I think it really sets it up for a much longer partnership, because we've said this a lot on our show, and I believe this. I think there is something intangible about it being one of only 3 games that's played on a neutral field every year. And I understand Kirby's viewpoint that it's a weekend. You can't have kids on campus and you can't show them the Athens experience. They can't come in your recruiting lounge. You can't have things be on the schedule you want it to be. I understand all that. My main argument against that has been they're having no problems recruiting. So I do wonder if it's a loss of culture. And when I say culture, I don't mean Georgia football team's culture, but just from a fan's culture perspective. Man, I love the cocktail party. I love everything about it. I love that it's neutral site. I love that people go for a full week and either stay at St. Simon's or Sea Island or Jekyll, or folks have an RV and drive down there and stay for the week. And it's like this congregation point and point of fellowship and party and all these things. And I love it, man. I love stadium half one way and half the other. And, all the tradition of it. And, blue to sky and all the different things that happen there. And so I would hate to lose that. And I know there's a large contingent of the fan base, and probably most importantly of the donor base that feels that way. So I feel a lot more secure about it after seeing the renderings, because if they execute that, man, and look, it's Jacksonville, so they could very well screw that up. But if they execute it, I think it could be really cool and bolster that moving forward. Now, the excitement about the 2-year blip, though, where it's going to be on campus 1 year each year, right. I think that's cool. I think that's neat to have that experience as a one-off. I mean, look, it's happened once in the last 30 years. And so, maybe if we do it once every 30 years, that'd be all right. So I'm okay with it. For me, which I was talking to my brother about this, I would be more interested in the one at Sanford than actually going to the Swamp. The Swamp's just, I mean, I would go, but it's not one that's on my list, right? Like I wouldn't hurt my feelings one way or the other if I ever went to the Swamp to see a game, but to have them back between the hedges and to avenge the absolute demolition that Coach Spurrier piloted when they came in the 90s, I would love to be there for that and kind of take that in. So yeah,
Right.
I think it would be cool.
I completely agree. I think it gives you a good reason to actually go to the Swamp, which no one really ever has. And then also in Athens, that would be a crazy game. I also talked about on previous podcasts, if there was any way to maybe make it like every 3 years, I know it'd be a little different. Maybe like Athens 1 year, Gainesville 1 year, and then maybe have it in Jacksonville. And that would give you, a kid that came in, even if he was great and left after his junior year, it would give you to play in each of those. Or even if there was a way to have it in Mercedes-Benz, it would be kind of more beneficial for us because, Jacksonville is closer for them. I feel like that was always a little bit of a advantage.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I would be interested if they wanted to go to, say, a quad model, right? Where you go, okay, every 4 years we're going to rotate. So every recruiting class is going to play 4 different sites. We're going to play 1 year in Athens. We're going to play 1 year in Gainesville, 1 year in traditional Jacksonville, but we're also going to do one at the Benz in Atlanta, which is 70 miles from Athens. So I would be okay with that. Or conversely, if they wanted to make it pure neutral and just went every other year, Jacksonville, Atlanta, I'd be okay with that too. So yeah, it's very up in the air to me how it's going to go. My one thing with this that we've talked about a bunch is Kirby gets what Kirby wants. And I don't think it's by chance that he hasn't moved off his answer for it, right? And I think at some point, if that crease opens, he's going to try to kick that door open and get it to be where it's back on campus, where they're rotating campus each year. So I don't know, man. I think it's a fascinating storyline. And this is something now we're talking about. This is 2 years in a row we're talking about this. So I don't think it's a storyline that's going away. I think the renovations have kind of amped it up again. I will be shocked if because of all this, he doesn't get questions about this in Nashville in a month at Media Days, which is going to burn him up because I feel like he's kind of salty about talking about it now. But I wouldn't be surprised if this turns into another conversation that week. And if he may or may not has some more sound bites as it pertains to his feelings on everything.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Completely agree. Yeah, and since we are talking about Georgia, Florida, and tailgates, I wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor, Viva Tequila Seltzer.com. If you want to go to the tailgate, if you're by the pool, so this is summertime, you're on the golf course, live long, live well, live it up. It's great for adult beverages. Got grapefruit, watermelon, and huckleberry, elderberry. Watermelon's my personal favorite, so check it out. One of the promo code for 25% off or 20% off is Hustle20. Again, that's Hustle20 for Viva Tequila Seltzer.com. And I wanted to, since we were just talking about tailgating, what Seth, is your tailgating schedule or ritual, maybe for a home game in Sanford? I know you like talking about everything. I was watching some of your Instagram and podcast. What's your tailgate setup?
Yeah, we're not scared of a tailgate, that's for sure. So it's funny when we go to Athens now, it's become this thing where we don't even really post up anywhere. We kind of have game day things that we always like to do. So we get up in the morning and I can't really start a game day unless I go to Jittery Joe's and get a cup of coffee. I get a cup of Attack the Day. Not an ad, that's just facts. That's where I go. And it just depends where we are for which one I'm going to go to. So that's generally how I start the day. And then we always go downtown and end up at Onward Reserve at some point because game day weekends, they have the mimosa station in the store. So we go get a mimosa from there, get us a nice Onward Reserve koozie. And then I have to go over to Horton's Drug and get myself a pair of cheap sunglasses. I do it every single game day weekend. It's a silly thing, but it's one of these things I have to do now. Nice. So we do that, and we generally end up in one of the stores to look around at gear or whatever it may be. And then we kind of make our way through North Campus. Man, I love North Campus on a game day.
Oh, yeah,
so
sure.
we always spend some time there. When we bring my older kids, we always take them to Hurdy and like throw the football in Hurdy, and do that. And then the answer changes a little bit if game day's in town, because if game day's in town, we'll go over to Myers Quad and hang out. I mean, that's a must. We did that Notre Dame weekend in 19 and had a blast. And like, we'll always do that if we're in town for a weekend where game day's in town, or if SEC Nation's in town and they post up, near the library and stuff, we'll go there. But then we generally try to visit our friends. So folks that we like to see, we'll try to hit different tailgates. So we'll kind of pop around. And that's kind of, I say, is our pregame gig. And then we usually like to get in the stadium before everything starts. Like, we want to hear Brooke on the PA going through all the traditions, and we want to be there for Lone Trumpeter. We want to hear Larry. We want to hear, Saturday. We want all of that. We want to experience all those things. So we're definitely get in the stadium and get situated type folks. I don't want to be there like right when kicks happen.
Exactly. And I agree. If all those is tough for a noon kick or 12 o'clock, I feel like the 3:30, or if there's a night game, even though it seems like we haven't had a night game in forever. Even though I think the first or the second one's, I think, at 6 p.m.
Yeah. The opener's going to kick at 6, which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's the other thing. Any showcase to get the lights on in between the third and fourth quarter for Light Up Sanford, man, I love that. That's become one of the cooler things since 19. So yeah, I love that. I'm hoping there's more of a showcase this year. I feel like Georgia has to be, I have no studies on this, but they have to be one of the only teams in the country coming off a national championship not to host a night game the entire season.
Yeah, I think it was last year. I forget on what website they had. Since SEC, I think in the last 20 years, whatever, it had like LSU had like 40 something night games, and it was like second was Alabama, and Georgia was like at the very lowest or near the end in the SEC, and the amount of night games, which is crazy. So kind of makes you kind of angry. And I know this year isn't the best slate, and I know the whole Oklahoma getting taken off, but yeah, I just feel like we need more night games, especially coming off back-to-back natties,
100%, man. I just feel like too, it's like a showcase, because you get to that time of night and it's one of the only games left, and people are settled. They're not out at the kids' soccer games for the day, or they're not at, Mima's birthday party or whatever it might be, right? Like, they're stationary, they're at home. So you're going to be in front of people's eyeballs. And like, I think that's important. Although you could make the argument that back-to-back national titles has made them as brand relevant as anybody, but still, I want it to be at the forefront for sure. Let me ask you this. What do you think about what may happen with the scheduling stuff? The schedule release is going to be Wednesday night for the 2024 season. I know that's going to be 8 games, but like, where do you see that going? Do you think there's any path but going to 9, or do you think there's a realistic possibility they could sit at 8?
I think it's going to be 8 right now. I thought it was going to be 9, and then I don't know if this was this Big Ten flex option. My buddy sent me something over the weekend. I don't know. He's Big Ten buddies, Ohio State guy. I've had him on the podcast, but anyway, they're talking about, hey, I'm doing my studying on my Big Ten flex option this weekend. I'm like, all right, but yeah, back to it. I do think maybe the permanent coming up maybe is going to be Florida, Auburn, and I think I keep hearing Kentucky, which Kentucky's Kentucky, not the most interesting. I know South Carolina probably doesn't want us to play every year if they don't want to have to play us. So I think it's going to be 8 maybe for the first 2024, but it could change.
Yeah, I just think they're going to have to. I don't know. I mean, I say that. Look, the SEC can do whatever the SEC wants. I mean, that's the bottom line. The pull they have and the revenue that they've got, they kind of set their own agenda. But I do think it would be a little bit of a travesty for Georgia not to play Tennessee every year. Like, I know that is not a quote unquote traditional rival when you look at the history of games actually played between Georgia Auburn and Georgia Florida. Tennessee, the quantity of games is not the same. But if you think about these seminal, iconic moments in Georgia football history, some of them happened against Tennessee, like Hobnail Boot, Tennessee. Herschel Walker, my God, a freshman running over Gold Bates, Tennessee. Like, I just think there's something romantic about that, right? And to lose that annually, I would kind of be bummed about, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. I think they're the one that gets chopped if they do this 3 permanent rotation, because look, nobody, me included, wants to lose Georgia, Florida. Nobody wants to lose Georgia, Auburn. So then you got to fill that last slot. And the Kentucky thing surprised me a little, to be honest, because the initial projections had listed, it seemed like South Carolina was going to be it. And there's a long history there from a games played perspective, especially with the border and everything. But yeah, I mean, Kentucky, that's good with me, because I feel like that's a lot more of a layup than the others. But I would miss seeing Georgia, Tennessee annually for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, should be interesting. And then real quick, what's your favorite Georgia maybe related song or country song related maybe to Georgia Bulldogs, or if you had to pick?
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 answers on this, okay? And I'm a little biased because I wrote a song for our show that is the lead-in to our show.
Okay,
so
yeah, I think I heard that the other day. Yeah.
Saturday in Athens is my favorite Georgia song, but that's biased. But for one that's been officially released, I'm going to go with Love You Son, Go Dogs. It's done by our buddy Ray Fulcher, who's been on our show a bunch. We absolutely love Ray. UGA grad, was a grad assistant on the football team there. He's just awesome. And it's funny, he's a prolific songwriter, and that is one of the songs that he didn't write, but ended up on his first album. And yeah, we just love it, man. It's a great one. He got the opportunity in the 2021 season to go on Marty and McGee when they were on campus and sing it, which was kind of just a really, really cool moment. So yeah, those are my answers. Our song and Ray's song, Love You Son, Go Dogs.
Okay. I like Corey Smith stuff. I like Every Day Has Dog. There was another guy that had one I watched a couple months ago. He was actually it might have been a grad student. I have to look it up, but his was really good. It was like Special One or This Is the Year. Anyway, it was really good. Two that kind of stood out. But yeah, I'd say Corey Smith stuff's really good.
Oh, we love Corey too, and that's, I mean, that's an all timer, right? Like Corey's is classic, and he is laugh out loud funny. Like he's great. So, and Corey loves the dogs. So yeah, I'm all in on that as a choice too.
Okay. And then one other thing. So what has to happen for Georgia to get a three-peat in 2023? Any kind of things that need to happen, or get your thoughts on it? Or
yeah, absolutely. Thing we always talk about in the offseason is we always caveat when we're talking about stuff is, look, they got to stay healthy, right? I mean, that's the big one. They need to stay healthy, and especially at key positions. I thought they weathered certain injuries last year. I'll tell you somebody I'm looking out for this year that I've been looking out for 2 years. It's just one of my favorites. But if Arian Smith can stay healthy,
yeah, he
is going to electrify college football. I mean, you can just put a pin in that and put it anywhere you want it. I just believe that with all my heart. I think if they can keep him on the field, and the fact that he's gone through this offseason healthy and got to play in the G-Day game, like I think all those things are good signs. So that's a big one for me. I think the other one is, and look, it has to start with the quarterback. It's how does Carson Beck show up when the lights get bright and we're between the hedges or we're on the road somewhere? And I think one of the things that has been discounted with Stetson's performance the last 2 years was he did a great job taking care of the football. Yeah. And I know people at times were concerned, especially after 2020, that he's going to be kind of a gunslinger and this might be a liability, but it is imperative, especially for a Kirby Smart quarterback, to take care of the football. And so I'm interested. I'm interested to see how Carson's going to do. I thought he looked outstanding at G-Day. I thought he looked in command of the offense. I think everybody has known he's got the physical tools, right? He can make every throw in that playbook. It's just, is it going to happen when it has to happen? And that I'm curious about. I do love, I think, for the transition to take place, what a perfect schedule for it to happen. So yeah, sure. There's going to be some ramp up time before they get to a point where I think they're going to be real tested. So I think that's a good thing, because the more game reps that he gets, the better. But so that's one. And then the other one is going to be what's going to happen in the back end of the secondary. So I one of the more, I think, underappreciated members of both championship teams was Chris Smith. And so I am very interested to see what happens without him in that defensive secondary. I just think his influence was greater than we have given him credit for. And he always seemed to be the one that made a monster play when it needed to happen. And so replacing him, I think is going to be a taller task than we probably envision right now. And look, they got plenty of talent to do it. I just, that's something I'm kind of looking at. I saw today ESPN released an article. I don't know who wrote it or anything, but maybe it was yesterday, talking that they are forecasting that Georgia will have the number one defense in the country again. And I think they're right. I think the defense is going to be dominant again. So yeah, I think my three will be they stay healthy, that Carson is not turnover prone, and that somebody takes over the mantle of that alpha leader in the defensive secondary. Those are my big three. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, completely agree. Well, I like all those. Mine's going to be, I think it's going to come down. I guess starts with the questions I have is, I think O-line, because we lost some guys. Broderick, Jones, was big. Getting our center back, Van Pran, was great.
Yeah.
I think, of course, Carson back, great. Look cool, calm, and collected. Look great in the spring. Feel really great about it. My only thing about his hand is, could he be like a Stetson Bennett and extend plays? Can get a run for a first down and move the chains? And then the Mike Bobo, which we all know Montkin was great, spectacular, back to back. You know, I want to pull for him for the Ravens. But, you know, does Bobo kind of he has had some great teams in his career. Aaron Murray did great. Hudson Mason in 2014. But does he kind of go back to some of those, you know, conservative third and Bobo is what they says? Hey, we'll run it up the middle. So there's a lot of questions with that. And then running back, we've got some guys, but do we have like that alpha guy that's going to come out and take all the carries? Like Kendall Milton has it, but he's just always been plagued with the injuries, you know, and the hamstrings. Branson Robinson looks really great. The other Robinson kid looked good in the spring, like a big bowling ball. So yeah, that we have some question marks there. And then I'm really excited about receiver. I think Donovan Levitt, Arian Smith, like you said, stay healthy is a problem for people. Ra Thomas, if he can kind of get it going with that. Of course, Brock Bowers is going to be great. I think we're going to be loaded at tight end. So that's kind of one of my questions are. Staying healthy is important, and then I do like the schedule. I mean, pretty much I don't want to say throw the helmets out there, but pretty much you're going to be favored in all the games till I think that at Knoxville is going to be the big. Of course, cold. It's going to be late, and you know it's going to be late in November, and kind of like where we're at with our depth. So I think that's going to be. But yeah, the defense wins championships. Defense is always going to be there with Kirby team.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. If you're a Georgia fan, you can always take solace in, right? Is defense always going to be there in some way, shape, or form. And in some ways, man, I think they have an opportunity to be more explosive this year than they were last year. Mm-hmm. I think that linebacking core has another year of experience, and you know, I just think can really, really like Ismail Mondon, I think, could put his name in the buckets of war conversation this year. I think he's going to have that good of a year if he can stay healthy. And so, I don't know, man, it's just incredible to me how well they develop kids and how kids buy into that program. So I think the sky is the limit for this year. And we kind of calling card of our show, man, we always just talk about the good old days of Georgia football are right damn now. And sure. I believe that, man. I just think it's such a good time to be a Georgia football fan. And we just got to always breathe this in, you know, not take any of this for granted. Like it's be excited and be happy about it and live in it. Like don't be worried or any of those things. Like, man, it's just incredible. That's what a 2-year run, man. It's just been awesome.
It's great. It's great to be a dog. You know, don't have that old Larry Munson isms kind of come in and worry.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's got to enjoy every game, and I mean, might have a chance at a three-peat. It's just great time to be just Georgia fan. We've had a lot of painful years, a lot of patience, but it's our time now, you know.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about, you know, if you'd known how it was going to turn out, would you still endure it all to get these last 2 years? And I'll tell you, like for me, 100%. Like it's been totally worth it. Like last 2 years, what a ride. Totally worth all the heartbreaks, whether it was, you know, second 26 or whether it was SEC title in 2012 or, I mean, there've been so many, right? And like I don't know. It's been incredible. So I hope it's one more year. I hope we're all partying in Houston in January, and I hope we keep that train rolling.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I did want to say, what's the best way to follow you guys? I know here's your the Saturday in Athens podcast. You're also on I believe on Apple Podcasts. You also are on Instagram and Twitter. What's the best way to follow you guys?
Yeah. So we're real active on social in the season for sure. And we try to be in the off season as well, but obviously the content's a little less. But yeah, Instagram, we're on a bunch. Love interacting with people on Twitter. We're on Facebook as well. We have a TikTok, which is funny for two 40-year-old men that host a podcast. But yeah, we're trying to stay with the times, brother. And like you and I talked about off air, we're trying to do some more stuff on YouTube this year. So try and put more of the content on YouTube, especially the interview episodes that we do, so people can kind of consume those and see our guests and all that type of stuff. Because that's been one of our favorite parts of the show, man, is learning people's stories and kind of how Georgia has affected their path. And it's just a beautiful community, man. So many cool people, and it's made it, I think, which is a silly way to say, easier to root for Georgia. Like we're almost rooting for friends now, as opposed to just the institution itself. So yeah, man. We'd appreciate any support, and I have loved being on today.
Oh yeah, I really appreciate it. And I think it's really great that you guys have looked at other different sports within Georgia, not just all football content, which makes it look better for the overall program. So I think that's been a great way on your different interviews with different people from the other sports.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing about Georgia's athletic department. There's so much good talent and all that. So we love to highlight those stories, and we're still trying to have some new guests and do different things. And so we're excited about some of the content coming this summer. And then, this fall is always great because having people come on and talk Dogs football and pick games and everything is one of our favorites. So we're fired up, man.
Awesome. Yeah, really appreciate your time today, Seth, and everybody check out the Saturday in Athens podcast. And we make sure, if you're still with us, like, subscribe, and share our podcast. Would be great to share that on YouTube. And we really appreciate it. And we're excited about all the episodes coming up on the Dawg House Podcast. We appreciate it.
All right, Trey, go Dogs, brother.
Go Dogs.
All right.